Okay, hello, this is Stasia Bliss. This time I wanted to discuss the role of life force in the death disease paradigm. Because we have been living with access to life force energy. Obviously, if you are alive, you have access to life force energy as discussed in the life force and energy introduction. But why do humans move into dis-ease and finally death? This might be like the big question. But if you look at how cells regenerate themselves, which I learned in school every 7 years, you have a completely new body, right? Your skin is shedding faster, and it takes 7 years for the bones to completely replace themselves. So if that is true, then why don't we look youthful forever, right? And the only reasons for that is, number one, of course, holding on to toxins from our food or our environment. So environmental toxins can store themselves, create free radicals in the body, and that causes the cellular structure to break down. But of course, there are preventative measures to help us in combating these free radicals. That's one level. That's a level I studied for years in the health and wellness industry, and it is a very important part to supplement with things that help us combat environmental toxins and pollutants. But then we also have the emotional layer of the body, which is emotional and trauma memories that are stored in us. And they've actually shown through the work of Dr. Candace Owens in The Biology of Belief, I believe is the name of her book. She speaks about how a cell, when it's replicating, will also replicate the emotional information. So if you have a trauma and your cells are renewing themselves, they'll take the trauma wound over. They don't shed it, they just translate it. And that's why you can have generational wounds passed down, because it actually passes down in the DNA. So besides those layers, then we also have the subject that I'm more focused on is our life force energy. And of course, the valves that we spoke about, the chakras that allow life force energy into the body, if they are cluttered with debris that are old beliefs, that are these emotions or traumas, or they are like physical clutter in the areas of the body of the organs and glands, then the life force energy would only destroy the body to try to come in all the way, because there are all these obstacles in the way, right? And you could think of it like a valve for water to come down, that over time, if it rusts or the pipes become filthy and you have less and less room for the water to come until there's no water moving through at all. And that would be equivalent to death. So as we are cluttered in mind, physical toxins, and also like an inability to think beyond the walls that we've been given. If we cannot also think and expand our consciousness, it is like that belief tunnel gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it shuts out. So that's how we can think of that death arrives because of the closing down of the channel for life force to express through. So in order to elongate or create longevity in the body is, how do we keep those channels open and life force flowing? Because life force will continually regenerate the cells. So that means it will also clear out emotional debris. It will also help move out toxic physical plane debris. And of course, supplements are helpful in working with life force energy, because you want to support the physical body. At the same time, you're supporting the mental, emotional, spiritual, pranic body. So deep breathing, but then maybe also taking something that's very good for your lungs or that's very good for the cells. And then, movement exercises that help open up the joints, and then also exercises for the mind that keep the mind able to expand and look at things differently. So that's the spectrum of death when we close that off. So what about disease? What about, I'd rather say, dis-ease? Coming out of ease with our body means that life force is stagnating in a certain area, or it's overflowing in a certain area. It's either too much or too little, right? In Chinese medicine, they'd say it's an underactive or an overactive organ pair. That is, they pair up the organs into 12 pairs, and those two organs work in consort and teamwork, the energy of the body that they govern. And I think working with the chakras and life force energy is very much like that, because the chakras kind of have authority over certain organs and glands in the area they're located, as well as the consciousness that's associated. So let's take an example. Say there is a restriction in the throat, and it could be like from you're a child and your parent tells you to be quiet all the time, to stop talking, to hold your tongue, that children are meant to be seen and not heard, which happened to a lot of my parents' generation, she as a child. So then that would cause a restriction in the throat chakra region, which is me speaking my truth if it's fully open. So not being able to speak the truth would cause like a compression in that valve for throat chakra. And that valve would now contain the memory, the debris of that emotional attack, so to speak, that you shouldn't talk, would be stored in the cells of the throat. So every time the cells of the throat regenerated, they would contain the same DNA structuring of you can't talk. So when we do life force moving techniques, like maybe toning, it helps to loosen and open and massage that chakra so that it can allow more life force energy to come through. So as we're toning and singing and ahhing and expressing, we're also opening up that center, which prevents any problems in the glands around here. So thyroid and parathyroid are going to be directly affected by a closed throat chakra, because life force energy can't get in there and saturate those tissues and keep them alive and well. So without access to life force energy, the organs or glands or tissues are deprived of that energy. They are shrinking back for some reason. And again, there could be a trauma wound there. And if it's a more chronic situation, the likelihood that it's generational is big. And the likelihood that it's even being brought down through a miasm, through other experiences and other realities, if you will, other lifetimes, other dimensions you're carrying as an overlay. So how do we work that? Well, that's what the videos that I'm creating here are meant to help walk through all this stuff. How do we increase the flow? Different exercises like we spoke of, the toning and so forth. And also to remember, if you have an illness, if you have a suffering in the body, it has been caused ultimately by the reduction of life force, or sometimes that's the result. The life force is reduced as a result of the injury. Like if you have a cut or a tear on your skin and you don't address it and it starts festering, then the life force energy at first tries to rush there, and then it may become distorted. But when we're dealing with either too much or too little life force energy, it's important to remember that we want to bring balance to the body first. We want to bring homeostasis first. In other words, we want to be able to integrate in a balanced way all the new life force energy that we receive. We don't want to just pump in a whole bunch of new life force energy right away, because that disease that is there, or that dis-ease anywhere, body, mind, or spirit, instead of being dispersed and released with that, sometimes because there's a fear of letting go, it just disperses itself around the body in different ways, if that makes sense. So if someone's not ready to fully release that dis-ease, that's because there's a lot of knots there. There's a lot of attachments, there's a lot of habitual things, past life things, possibly ancestral, childhood, all kind of creating tendrils around that illness that perpetuates it. So if we're talking about a chronic situation, if it's an acute situation, sometimes just doing some strong breathing practices or yoga can really move things out so it doesn't have a chance to settle in. And that can be a time to power through some life force enhancing or sometimes just taking some really good supplemental healthy mushrooms, reishi mushroom, shiitake, lion's mane, cordyceps, all these kinds of things can be really beneficial at that moment. So as we take this journey through reclaiming and empowering ourselves and our health and beginning to learn how to manage our life force energy, then we begin to step away from the paradigm that is death and disease. I really do believe that is the old paradigm. Even Jesus said that death too we will overcome. And what it takes is a leap in consciousness. Yes? But there are steps to take in order to make that leap. And one of them really lies in understanding the life force energy and how to manage it, how to balance it, how to increase it and reduce it at will, so that you are in the driver's seat with spirit, with source, with your higher expression, with love. And I do believe love is the ultimate expression of life force energy, that it's not just this flame that's understood by the mind, but it is an essence of pure love that we can understand in a way. We can align our minds with and see there's a way for this to go and to enhance our lives and the lives of others. So I'm excited to be on this journey with you, and more to come.